Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Would you please rise and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Mr. Soriano.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. Clerk, please call the roll.
Greenberg.
Here.
Hicks.
Here.
Mako.
Here.
Collier. Here. Chapakas absent. Soriano.
Here.
Tamarkin.
Here.
Thank you. Next agenda item, any additions or corrections to the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from August 28th, 2024?
So moved by Hicks.
I have a motion by Mr. Hicks. Do I have a second?
Second, Greenberg.
Second by Mr. Greenberg. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Hicks.
Yes.
Greenberg.
Yes.
Mako.
Yes.
Collier.
Yes.
Soriano.
Yes.
Tamarkin.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from August 14th, 2024?
So moved by Hicks.
I have a motion by Mr. Hicks, a second.
Second, Greenberg.
A second by Mr. Greenberg. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Hicks.
Yes.
Greenberg.
Yes.
Mako.
Yes.
Collier. Soriano.
Yes.
Tamarkin.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is swearing in of applicants and speakers, and I'll recognize the city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are now at the public hearing portion of the meeting. The public hearing will operate as follows. Administrative staff will make a presentation or comment on the application. The applicant or their representative may then make a presentation or comment on the application. The applicant has 10 minutes to present, and additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. Public comment will then be open for 3 minutes allowed per speaker. Additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. Speakers must complete a speaker slip and come to the podium and state their name and address. The applicant will then be given 10 minutes to comment. Additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. If there is more than one application pending for a particular address, the presentation on each application may be consolidated and presented as one. At this time, will persons wishing to present testimony this evening please rise and raise your right hand to be sworn in? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, state I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. We'll now move to the applications and public comment. The first item we have is a conditional use application, and I'll read this into the record. We have CU-0004-2024 to consider a conditional use application for property located at 1509 Blatt Boulevard, parcel ID 025-011769, current zoning IM, Innovation and Manufacturing, Rise Gahanna LLC, Jeremy Haynes applicant. And we'll turn it over to Ms. Kapka for a presentation.
The first application of the night is a conditional use at 1509 Blatt Boulevard. This application was filed under the current zoning code, so the zoning designation is Innovation and Manufacturing. As you can see on the zoning map, this zoning district is consistent with the surrounding area. The conditional use is for a new salon in an existing office building on the Rise Commercial District site. This site has 14 total buildings, and just one will be utilized for the salon. As mentioned, the site is zoned Innovation and Manufacturing, and general personal services are a conditional use within this zoning district, and salons fall within that category. The salon use would occupy around 1,400 square feet of one existing office building. The total area of that building is 9,700 square feet, so it would only be taking up a small portion of the building. There are no exterior modifications proposed on the site at this time. The applicant predicts that the salon would be used by both nearby residents and employees. Here is a site plan that was submitted by the applicant. The hair salon would be in Building 11 in the northwest corner. It is one of two buildings that is closest to the main access point into the site. You can also see that there is parking along both the front and side of this building. Here's the conditional use criteria that must be met in order for the application to be approved. The use is a conditional use of the zoning district. It's in accord with appropriate plans for the area. It will not have undesirable effects on the surrounding area, and it will be in keeping with the existing land use character. Staff recommends approval of the conditional use application as submitted. All of the conditional use criteria has been met. Additionally, this use was permitted on this site under the previous zoning code, and the code is currently undergoing some revisions to make it a permitted use again. There is also typically less demand for office than salons in the city, and the applicant states that salons tend to generate more revenue than offices do. Finally, parking requirements are still fully met with the change of use. And that is it.
Thank you, Ms. Kapka. We'll now open the public comment. Would the applicant like to comment? Okay. We did not receive any speaker slips, so we will now close public comment and open it up to questions from the commission. Starting on my left, Ms. Pollier.
I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hicks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a question for Ms. Kapka. What are some other retail uses that would be a conditional use of this zoning district? I didn't look it up, so I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. Do you mean within general personal services or just?
So again, a retail in our innovative and manufacturing zoning district isn't intuitive to me, but what are some other uses that would be granted with a conditional use?
So I'm not sure exactly which retail uses are a conditional use right now. I know that we have multiple uses that are listed as a conditional use in innovation and manufacturing right now, and most of those we are making permitted. So generally, with the code revisions, the majority of retail uses would be permitted in IM.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Mr. Greenberg?
Well, I'd like to ask the applicant, we're talking about a hair salon? Yes. Is that what we're, okay. And so similar to like a Kenneth's?
If you could state your name and address, please, for the record.
My name is Adam Hardebeck. Address, the 1509 Black Boulevard.
So
Sorry, what
is
was
it
that?
is it like other retail establishments that are more in a commercial district, like one Kenneth's, which is, or others?
We would do it in like salon suites. So an individual salon owner could rent, essentially we're turning an office into a salon. So about 100 square feet, or 10 by 10 or 10 by 12. They'll have a seating area, chair, mirror, and they can rent the space for themselves, like to run their business.
And there's no plans right now for the rest of the building to be turned into salons?
No, wait, part of the building, the other side of the building is office suites. And then there's a shared common area for like a break room, restrooms, that kind of stuff. So we're just wanting to turn one side of it into the salons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Mr. Siriano?
No questions from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Siriano. Mr. Tamarkin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do these buildings exist now? Are they built or are these proposed buildings?
No, they're fully built.
They're fully occupied
exist.
for the most part? Because when you look at, Matty, go back to yes, that picture. So it looks here like you have about 100,000 square feet of building, but only about 75 parking spaces. Is parking an issue here?
It's not.
Or the parking's not drawn in? Mr. Blackford?
So what you see on site, this was approved, I think, back in like 18 or 19, and it's a commercial self-storage facility with two of the buildings having some rentable space. So everything else is self-storage, and so there really wasn't even a demand for this amount of parking. It's what they had built, and so yes, it meets the minimum parking requirements. Why it looks like there's so much building and so little parking is because of the use is a storage facility for everything else but the two of the buildings.
Okay, my mind was telling me these were office or manufacturing or light manufacturing, and I'm calculating that we got 100,000 square feet of building with no
Yeah,
parking.
no, I remember doing the planning commission inspections for those buildings, and there's a lot of different tenants and users. Most of it was storage space, but there's definitely people operating out of those spaces, which was the intent of this project, is it's storage, but it also creates jobs and has things. So it's operated in an interesting fashion over the years, but one that's 100% consistent with the zoning and the original approvals.
Okay. And when you look at the interior layout of this proposed building, you know, again, you're showing, you know, certainly more offices than there's parking for that building, but I guess you can park at the other buildings, so. if
Yeah,
you're-
the parking's spread across the front, like for
Okay.
these spaces.
I guess if you're not gonna be concerned, I'm not gonna be concerned, but someone coming to a salon isn't gonna wanna park 3 buildings away. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Markin. I have just a couple questions. So kind of in the same vein as Mr. Markin, so how many customers do you expect, let's say, per day on let's say, your peak hours? And again, this kind of correlates back to the parking.
Yeah, some of it's gonna depend on the individual salon renters. But I mean, how long does it take for, you know, you may have one customer in there to get her hair done. I believe it's usually an hour, maybe it's 2 hours if they're getting color. Somebody else in the room, other people may know better than I do. But they're gonna be rotating out. So if you have one person in there cutting hair and they have one person at the chair. So it shouldn't be a huge impact on the difference from if you have one or two people running an office space.
So I guess you're not expecting, let's say, 15, 20 people there at one time?
For
Just based on, let's say, if you're operating other similar locations, what type of the number of clientele are you going to be serving at one time? I guess that's the question.
probably one per stylist, but they don't all always work at the same time either. So they'll have flexible schedules. I'm not going to operate the salon. We're going to rent the space out to somebody else who operates their own individual business. So some of them work through the week, some of them work over the weekends. It's going to fluctuate, but I don't think, I guess question-wise, if there's one person in there working, they probably have one person that they're providing haircutting service to.
Okay. And then the question for Ms. Kapkas. So if we're approving this really without any real conditions, so to speak, would that be correct?
Correct.
Okay. Just want to clarify that. Okay. Any other questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve CU-0004-2024?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve CU 0004-2024 to consider a conditional use application for property located at 1509 Black Boulevard.
I have a motion by Mr. Greenberg. Do I have a second?
Second, Soriano.
Second by Mr. Serrano. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to be in support of this conditional use. I think it's a relatively low-intensity use and commensurate with what our zoning code dictates. I think it says limited commercial services supporting manufacturing or office functions, such as small food service operations or retail-related on-site products. And I think that this would qualify for that. And so I tend to agree with staff. I'll be in support.
Thank you, Mr. Serrano. Mr. Hicks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to state for the record that neither Mr. Greenberg or I have personal knowledge of hair salons. I'm surprised that you knew what Kenneth's is, but
My wife goes there.
maybe Mrs. Greenberg, like Mrs. Hicks, knows what Kenneth's is. So I asked the question about retail use because I know from time to time we get applications for non-permitted uses in our old OCT and current IM district like schools, residential. But the criteria for granting a conditional use, I agree with my colleagues that I believe they are met, and I'll be supporting the application.
Thanks, Mayor Hicks. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Suriano,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Mako,
Yes.
Pollyea,
Yes.
Tamarkin.
Yes.
Motion passes. Okay, our next item is going to be Royal Manor Elementary. There are two items. I'll read these both into the record. We have a design review and then a variance. The first one is the design review application. It's DR-0012-2024 to consider a design review application for site plan and landscaping for property located at 299 Empire Drive, parcel ID 025-002788. Current zoning RID, Restricted Institutional District, Royal Manor Elementary School, Paul Miller applicant. And then we have a variance application, case V-0022-2024, to consider a variance application to vary section 1163.06A, lighting, striping, and traffic control of the codified ordinances, City of Gahanna, for property located at 299 Empire Drive, parcel ID 025-002788, current zoning RID, Restricted Institutional District, Royal Manor Elementary School, Paul Miller applicant. And now we'll turn it over to Ms. Kapka for a presentation.
These next applications are for a parking lot expansion at Royal Manor Elementary. These applications were filed under the former zoning code, and the zoning district at that time was Restricted Institutional District. On the zoning map here, you can see that the site is within a residential neighborhood, and it's surrounded by single-family residential homes on all sides. The applications are a design review and variance for a parking lot expansion. This expansion will add 33 parking spaces to the existing 63 spaces, and it includes a new drive aisle and 2 rows of parking. The expansion will be connected to the existing parking lot to the north. The zoning code also has landscaping requirements that go along with new parking lots. In this case, 898 square feet of landscaping is required, and 1,205 square feet is provided. There are also 9 trees that are required to be planted, and that requirement is met as well. There are also additional trees being planted to meet parking lot screening requirements. The zoning code states that whenever parking lots are adjacent to residential, there must be screening provided between the parking lot and the residential properties. So in this case, there is screening on both the east and west sides of the parking lot expansion to help screen the parking lot from those adjacent properties. Here's an aerial view of the site showing what the lot looked like prior to the parking lot expansion. In this aerial view, you can also see the pickup and drop-off area that's in the front of the school. That portion is illuminated while the new parking lot and expansion is not. In red, that shows the general area of where the parking lot expansion will be. So you can see the residential lots that are on the east and west side of that expansion. Here's a site plan showing what the parking lot expansion will look like. So anything in darker light gray is what's being added to the lot. With the increase in parking spaces, the number of handicapped accessible spaces required is also increased, which is why those are being modified on the southern part of the lot there. You can also see 2 parking lot islands, which are used to help meet the landscaping requirements. There is 1 variance being requested with this application. That is for the requirement that parking lots with at least 10 spaces must be illuminated. Both the existing lot and the expansion are not illuminated. Here's the standard variance criteria that must be met in order for the variance to be approved. And then on top is the standard design review criteria. And since the site is zoned Restricted Institutional District, it falls within Design Review District 3, which contains some additional recommendations. Some relevant recommendations are that entrances and exits to parking lots shall be well decorated and landscaped. Earth mounting and trees are recommended to reduce noise, and a generous use of vegetation is also recommended. Staff recommends approval of both the design review and variance. as the criteria has been met for both applications. Some of the design review District 3 recommendations have also been met. The plan exceeds landscaping requirements, and the parking lot is screened from the adjacent residential properties. In regards to the variance, the existing parking lot is not illuminated, and the applicant states that adding lights to this lot may disrupt the neighboring residential properties. And as mentioned, the student pickup and drop-off area is illuminated, just the employee parking lot is not. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kapka. We'll now open public comment. Would the applicant like to comment? Again, if you could state your name, address, and association with the project.
Paul Miller, Shore Architects, 230 Bradenton Avenue, Dublin, Ohio. And I'm the applicant for Shore Architects representing Gahanna Lincoln Public Schools.
Okay, do you want to add anything?
Nothing to add, but I'm here available to answer any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you. Did not receive any speaker slips, so we will now close public comment and open up the questions from the commission. Starting on my left, Ms. Pollier.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Chair. My question is for you, sir. I just have a couple of questions, mainly concerning the illumination issue. You know, it's a school, so I am concerned about pickup and drop-off, especially drop-off in the morning hours when it gets darker in the mornings, and these are elementary school kids. Can you describe what kind of illumination? I mean, I can't remember the last time I drove by that school in dark, so I don't know what kind of illumination is there at the pickup and drop-off area.
Certainly. And certainly as a school, the client here is well aware of those requirements, and it was a part of our discussion when planning this project. The building itself is illuminated with wall packs that provide light near the building. The drive off of Empire, that's the loop, is where bus drop-off occurs, and that's well illuminated, and not really a part of this parking lot area. The real catalyst for the parking lot addition is to create a loop for parent drop-off and additional parking spaces. The existing site is woefully undersized per code. We're still even shy of parking spaces per code even with this parking lot expansion, but it's making a good improvement to it. The parents drop off when they're near the building, so this really is stacking and primarily utilized at pickup at the end of the day. Drop off in the mornings tends to be a little bit more staggered, and people are able to drop near the building. And that is the preferred, safer way to have students near the building at drop off, not walking through the parking lot. And so that's the habit that the parents already have and how we are going to intend to use this site. And then throughout the day, that really is staff parking that is being utilized in this area. So, you know, we could consider light poles in that area, and the district's not opposed to that, other than we want to recognize that we are within a residential neighborhood that is kind of a quiet, calmer area, and don't want to disrupt the neighboring property. So without a strong need from the user side, from the district, that's where this variance application comes in.
I guess that kind of is a good segue into my next question. Do you have any data or any research that you did to indicate that the residents would be disrupted by these lights if you eliminated the parking lot?
You know, I don't have any conversations with those neighbors or opinions on this one. Of course, they were notified of this meeting, so open the opportunity to anybody here in the audience perhaps to speak on this project, but we have not received anything.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but the reason I'm asking is because you specifically said in your application that you were concerned that the residents would be disrupted by this illuminated parking lot, and that's why I wondered if you had any data or research that indicated that. And where you might
Nothing
have gone.
specific.
Have you spoken to anyone like at the school, like any of the administrators, to ask them what their feedback was about this?
Yeah, this input was given from the principal at the school, along with Cliff Hetzel, who's our excuse me, I'm totally blanking on his position now. He just moved up. And then Kevin Klingler, they're also with the schools, excuse me. I'm blanking on their positions at this moment. I'll get you in a second.
No, that's okay. So I just wanted to know if you've had any conversations. I mean, you don't need to specify exactly who, but just administrators at the school or anything like that, that would have given you some feedback. And then just one additional question. I mean, I'm also concerned too, the parking lot's not illuminated at night. Half the year, night starts at 4:30, 5 o'clock. Are you concerned at all about, or have there been any discussions about potential, I don't want to use the word crime, but just bad acts that might go on in that parking lot? Especially, in my opinion, it seems as though the darkness kind of, light kind of in my opinion, kind of is an incentive for people to stay away as opposed to darkness. Possibly people could use that parking lot in ways that it's not intended to. Has that been considered at all?
Considered, yes. Considered and chosen to be a priority to the school district, no. They didn't see that as a threat for their site, the way it's operating right now. They really see this as kind of extension of the existing lot that they haven't had issues with. The building itself is illuminated. Like I said, the wall packs around the building, security cameras on the property of the building itself. They just saw this kind of as an extension of their existing condition of the parking lot that has not been an issue for them historically.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Pauly. Mr. Hicks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I share a lot of the same questions that Ms. Pauly asked, but Mr. Miller, could you clarify, and if you stated it and I missed it, I apologize, but the concern on the surrounding areas, was it from light pollution or construction?
Light pollution was the driving factor there.
That was my only question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Mr. Greenberg?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like my planning commissioners that have already talked, I have a lot of concerns about not having lighting on that new parking area. It just seems that in the winter months, it's dark in the morning when people get there, and it's dark in the evening, and if teachers work a little bit late, it's going to be dark, and there won't be any light to see what's going on in that area. So I really don't have a question. I just have a lot of concern, and I think the school district should take a look at rethinking that. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Mr. Siriano?
Yes. Mr. Miller, you mentioned that we are still short on code-required parking for the school. Do you know by how much?
I know we calculated that for the application, and I don't have that off the top of my head, but do you have that number, perhaps? We're at 96.
So I don't recall what it was under the previous code, because I think it was a calculation based on number of students and number of staff. Under current code, I believe it's 1 space per 400. But that's something that we've been looking at revising as well, because I know I did the calculations for what it would be under the new code for this property, and it was in the hundreds.
And on that subject, we're not changing the enrollment of the school or any of the use of the school. So that does fall into, a bit of a grandfathered situation. However, we know programmatic needs demand more space on that site. And so this was the opportunity to improve that and get the loop for the parent drop-off installed, which will really alleviate traffic on that site.
Sure. No, and I was just really curious about if we are short on parking and I guess there's a need relative to parking, why not just put, if we're going to the effort to extend the parking, why not just accommodate what's required or what's needed? With the addition, obviously, of the drop-off loop.
The size and location of this, really, the driving factor was the loop for the parent drop-off. And so you see that parking is surrounded around that paving required for the drive aisle. To the north of this is a ball field.
Okay.
That is a site asset that's wished to be maintained as a part of this. So that's what defines some of the extents.
Okay. Got it. Okay, those are my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Soriano. Mr. Tomarkin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Miller, I understand you're the architect and not the school administrators, but is this building used at all in the evening? You know, are there evening activities at all at the school?
Yeah,
it's
as
an
an
elementary
elementary school, you know, it does dismiss during daylight hours at all times of the year. They don't have use of it in the evenings. That ball field gets used during daytime activities, but there's not regularly scheduled events or anything for those evening hours.
No sports, no arts, those aren't done at this school?
That's not a need of the site, no.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tomarkin, and I have no additional questions. Anything else, Ms. Polly?
Mr. Chair, would you indulge me in a couple more questions?
Absolutely.
Just as a general question, I am informed that this project is pretty much completed, yet you're here now asking for a variance. Can you kind of just explain the timing to me, please?
We submitted this variance in April. We're just now getting in front of you. Frankly, I'm not totally sure why, that all that distance from the variance application. But we did have, you know, delays from approvals from the city for both civil and the zoning variance from that initial application back in April. We do on school projects, you have this pinch point of you got to get work done during summertime because this kind of construction would be very disruptive while school's in session. We understand that must comply with the zoning codes and the ruling from this board, and the school's committed to meet those standards. We did proceed ahead with some construction. So yes, it says installed when you drive by today, including the landscaping, incidentally, is all in place right now. If lighting is a requirement of this board, we'll install that lighting, no issue.
Okay, and then just one additional question. The retention pond, is there a plan to put fencing around that?
Fencing, no, and I will remind, it is a detention pond, so it is dry. So it will be maintained and grassed through that area.
Okay, I have spoken to a couple concerned citizens in the area who have told me that it might be dry currently, but that when there's a lot of rain, it can fill up pretty significantly, and there's some concern about, especially since this is at a school, there's a little bit of concern about no fencing being around that. Just something to consider. Okay, I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Polly. Okay, seeing no further questions, do we have a motion to approve DR-0012-2024 and case B-0022-2024?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I make a motion for approval of DR-0012-2024, the design review for 299 Empire Drive.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Tomarkin. Do we have a second?
I'll second it, Holly.
Second by Ms. Polly. Any discussion? Ms. Polly?
Yes, I am not going to be in support of this, mainly because of the lighting issue. I am concerned about the lack of illumination in the parking lot completely. If you drive around to the different schools, all of the other parking lots have illumination, except one, and that's because the parking lot hasn't been redone. I personally live across the street from an elementary and a middle school, and I've never even thought about disruption whatsoever until I read this application, thinking, oh, somebody might be disturbed. I understand where you're coming from, but I feel like if that was a problem, some more research might have been adequate to present to us, stating that it wasn't going to be a problem. I also would have liked to see a little bit more due diligence done as to whether the administrators and/or principal actually wanted this or were in favor of it. That would have been nice to see as well. But mainly, I mean, this is an elementary school, and, you know, my concern is just the lack of illumination, so I will be voting no.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Polly. Mr. Hicks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have an issue with the design review, so I'll be in support of it, but I agree that the criteria for the variance approvals is not met. Specifically, I don't feel, in my opinion, the variance is necessary. I don't feel like there's support for it, so I'll be in favor of the design review, but opposed to the variance.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Mr. Greenberg?
I'm in agreement with my colleagues, I will be in favor of the design review, but I will vote no on the variance. You've indicated that the school board's would be willing to put in lighting if we vote that way. And, you know, safety, I think, is very important, especially at schools, especially in today's world, and having lighting would go a long way towards that. And it's in our code, and I don't see any reason not to require it. So I will be voting no. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Mr. Siriano?
Yeah, I also, I'll be in support of design review, but not the variance. I agree with my colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. Toronto. Mr. Tamarkin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to take an opposing view. I'm going to make an assumption that on the variance, if the school thought lighting would be needed, the school would have put lighting in. I think schools are very, very concerned about safety, and they're very cautious operators. And you know, I'm going to go with the fact that if the school didn't feel the need and didn't require it, I am going to be okay with the variance and approve it. Vote yes, even though, based on what the prior said, I think that'll be outnumbered.
Thank you, Mr. Tamarkin. My only comment is I've now reached that stage in my life where I am a parent of a Royal Manor student, so I am going to be abstaining from any vote on this. Also procedurally, I think because we have both the design review and a variance, we'll do separate votes on those items. Okay. So with that, have a roll call vote on the design review, and that's DR-0012-2024.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Pollyea,
No.
Suriano,
No.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Mako.
Abstain. Motion passes. Next, we'll have a roll call vote on the variance, which is V-0022-2024.
I'm not sure that we had a motion or a second yet.
Yeah, we have to make a motion for that.
Okay, so to have a motion to approve V-0022-2024.
So moved, Pollyea.
Have a motion by Ms. Pollyea. Do we have a second?
Second to Morgan.
Second by Mr. Tamarkin. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Pollyea,
Yes.
Tamarkin.
Excuse me. I'm so sorry. No, I'm so sorry.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Jeez.
Suriano,
No.
Greenberg,
No.
Hicks,
No.
Mako.
Abstain. Motion fails. Okay, our last set of applications is Master Metals. We have a design review, we have a final development plan, and we have a variance application. And I'll read these into the record. So first, we have a design review, DR-0013-2024, to consider a design review application for site plan and landscaping for property located at Levitt Road, parcel ID numbers 026-190717 and 025-006689, current zoning OCT, Office, Commercial, and Technology, Master Metals, Morrison Rail LLC applicant. And then we have a final development plan application, which is FDP-0008-2024, to consider a final development plan application for property located at Levitt Road, parcel ID numbers 026-190717 and 025-006689, current zoning OCT, Office, Commerce, and Technology, Master Metals, Morrison Rail LLC applicant. And then finally, a variance application, V-0023-2024, to consider a variance application to vary sections 1155.07B1, outdoor storage areas, 1163.05A, surface and maintenance, and 1163.06A, lighting, striping, and traffic control of the codified ordinances of the City of Gahanna for property located at Levitt Road, parcel ID numbers 026-190717 and 025-006689. Master Metals, Morrison Rail LLC applicant. And turn it over to Ms. Kapka for her presentation.
These applications are for a new metal recycling yard off of Levitt Service Road. The site does not yet have an address, but it's a few parcels east of Morrison Road and a parcel south of Claycraft Road. These applications were also filed under the former zoning code, and at the time, the zoning for the site was Office Commerce and Technology. The project includes a final development plan, design review, and variance for a metal recycling yard on an undeveloped 9-acre site that's located just behind the Kahiki food site. As mentioned, it was zoned Office Commerce and Technology at the time of submittal. The use is classified as metals recovery facilities in the NICS code, which is permitted by right in the OCT zoning district. The project does include a large outdoor storage area. The storage area is located fully outside of all setbacks and is screened from the right-of-way and adjacent properties. The screening includes use of a 10-foot high privacy fence, some mature trees around the exterior of the site, and some new evergreen trees at the front of the site. There is also an existing gravel access drive on the site. Doing some research into this, it looks like it was installed around 2015 and didn't receive any city approvals. So in order for this access drive to remain, a variance is required. Here is an aerial view of what the site currently looks like. On this view, you can see the railroad tracks on the northern portion of the site, as well as the existing gravel drive. And you can see a lot of the mature foliage that exists, most of which will be removed during the construction process. Here is a site plan that was submitted by the applicant. The large green area is the outdoor storage area, which takes up the majority of the site. The 10-foot tall privacy fence is shown in blue around the exterior of the site. And although the access drive will remain as gravel at the beginning, there is a paved parking lot that is mainly for employees that's located on the eastern side of the lot. And that parking lot does meet all zoning requirements except for illumination. There are 3 variances requested with this project. The first is for the requirement that materials in outdoor storage areas cannot exceed 10 feet in height. That is because the highest amount of screening you can have in OCT is 10 feet. The applicant states that they're requesting this variance because there may be times where materials exceed the 10-foot maximum. The next is that all parking areas and drives must be hard surfaced. The existing access drive will not be paved until construction is complete. The final is that parking lots with at least 10 spaces must be illuminated. The employee parking lot is currently proposed to not be illuminated. Once again, here's the standard variance criteria that applies to each of the variances. And then here's the standard design review and final development plan criteria. Staff recommends approval of the design review and final development plan applications. The use is permitted by right, and there are currently no buildings proposed on the site. The site is also at the end of Levitt Service Road and has no visibility from any major roadway. Staff has no objection to the 3 requested variances. The applicant states and has shown in their submitted plans that the stored materials, even when exceeding 10 feet, would not be visible from the right-of-way due to the privacy fence, evergreen trees, and the existing grade at the site. The parking lot will only be used by employees during working hours, which is why they are not illuminating it. The applicant is also uncertain of the soil quality on the site and would like to install a paved drive post-construction. If the access drive variance is approved by Planning Commission, staff recommends adding a strict timeline to that approval. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kafka. We'll now open the public comment. Would the applicant care to comment? Again, if you can state your name, address, and association with the project.
It's Anna Vagatus at, we're the landscape architect, Ferris Planning and Design associated with the project, and that's at 4876 Cemetery Road in Hilliard. Mostly just wanted to say that we appreciate you hearing it. We've worked with the planning and zoning staff here for, I think, about the past year, going through revisions to try and get a plan that everybody approved of to get in front of you. The site specifically was chosen by the applicant, Master Metals, who's here tonight to also answer questions.
because of its location with these rails and these railroads and being that use is desired for this recycling facility. So he wants to be in Gahanna and is looking forward to working with you all. And if you have any questions for me or for Chris for Master Metals, please let me know.
Okay, thank you. Don't believe we received any speaker slips, so we will close public comment and open up questions from the commission. Starting on my left, Ms. Pollier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple questions, if I may. The amount of times where, well, first of all, let me ask, what types of materials would be stored that would be exceeding 10 feet in height? Are we talking about like stacked materials, or are we talking about like one piece of something that would be taller than 10 feet? Or-
This is loose material. This is loose
Excuse me.
cut. I'm sorry. My name is Chris Weber, 3103 Lamb Avenue, Columbus, Ohio, 43219. This would be cut steel in 3 and 4 foot sections, stacked outside, just in a pile.
Is there any way to do that so that they do not exceed 10 feet in height, if they're just stacks?
Well, it's the dumping. You know, when we dump the material and process the material, we're choosing the site primarily to load rail cars. And in doing that, we'll have times when it exceeds it, so we have enough material to load the rail cars and when it's dumped.
I see.
So that also stops us being over and not having lots and lots of piles everywhere and putting it to one or a few areas for storage.
Okay. How frequently do you think this would be the case?
I couldn't tell you. Probably once or twice, maybe 3 times a month.
Okay. About the parking lot, what kind of security will be there as far as, I mean, you say the employee parking lot will not have any illumination. I understand that. Is there going to be any kind of like security, or how is it enclosed, I guess?
Well, the site will be enclosed with fencing
Okay,
for that. And then we also will have a camera system 24/7.
okay. And how many employees
We estimate between 10 and 20
at like any given day?
any given day,
Okay.
including
And then,
truck drivers. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, no,
Including truck drivers, so the staff will change.
I see, okay. And then, as far as the access area, the access drive, what would the time frame be then, post-construction, to have that paved?
We don't have an exact timeline because, as you guys know, the soil there, it used to be part of Claycraft, where they made bricks, and we're unsure of what soil we're going to run into and what we have to do to change where it currently comes in. You're talking about the entrance?
Yeah, the access drive,
Yeah.
for the reason for the variance.
But it
and so
wouldn't be
forth.
very long. It'd take a few months.
Has there been any soil testing yet?
No, not yet. No.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Polly. Mr. Hicks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Weber, walk me through the use of this yard. So how would material arrive?
By
How long would-
semi-truck. And trailer.
How often?
Every day.
And how long would it stay on average?
30 to 45 days.
Okay, and how does it leave?
It leaves by rail or other semi-trailer.
And where does the material come from? Like construction or demolition?
Yeah, construction, demolition.
Where is this operation taking place today?
3103 Lamb Avenue.
Okay.
Near the airport.
Now, would that continue, or will
No.
this replace it?
This would replace it.
Okay. To follow up on a question Ms. Pollier asked, we've been asked to put a condition on granting a variance for paving the road. What would be a reasonable date in your mind? Because we
Well-
got to give a date.
It couldn't happen this year because the plants are, you guys know, are already closing. So it'd be almost impossible to get a date this year. So we'd hope by this same time next year, we'd have a paved road.
So 1 year?
At least 1 year. yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Mr. Greenberg?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple of questions. The material's going out by rail, not coming in by rail?
Correct,
It's only coming in by semi-truck?
correct.
And is there ever any other material in the semi-truck when it dumps other than the metals?
No, not at all.
Okay. Are you familiar with the Ohio EPA legitimate recycling rules?
As pertaining to,
The site and as
Yes.
pertaining to, you have to keep records to ensure that you're recycling what's going out, at least 60% of it's going to get recycled.
oh, yes, yes,
Okay.
yeah. We've been in the recycling business 25 years.
All right, great. And so there's no other fluids or anything else that is on that steel as it comes into the facility?
No, most of what we're getting in would be pre-processed on site, a demolition site or a construction site, where it's usually already cut and then brought to us. We would cut it down further to size and then load it.
So what kind of heavy equipment is going to be on the site?
Material movers and shears and baling equipment.
Okay. And in order to be consistent with what we just did with the last application, not requiring any lighting, they're asking for a variance for no lighting, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and that is part of our code, to have lighting in the parking areas. What's the justification? Everybody is off the site at 5 o'clock?
Yes, yes,
And they're not there early in the morning working?
correct, correct.
Okay. All right, I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Mr. Soriano?
I don't have any questions. I'm just commenting on what Mr. Greenberg's question about the lights. I think the key difference in this site is, number one, that it's secured, and number two, there won't be folks on site after hours. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Tamarkin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I think this was the answer, I just want to confirm. No recycling of automobiles or car crushing,
No,
purely pre-sorted metals already arriving.
correct. If there are parts from automobiles, it would already be cut up and anything, fluids or whatever, removed before it'd come to this location. This is a location to transport material, not to completely process it.
Okay. And other than a trailer on site, no building? Correct. Everything, all the work, everything's done outdoors 365 days a year?
Yes, yes.
No further comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Markin. A few questions. Going back to the access road, so currently it says here on the site plan it's 12 feet in width. Is that correct?
12, yes.
That seems pretty narrow to me, especially if everything is coming in on semis, and I would assume we're working on the assumption that's going to be a temporary condition, correct?
That is correct.
And if we do get to the point where you upgrade that to something permanent, it's going to, I would assume you would want to widen that.
Yeah, probably double in size.
And that's kind of my point, because I can see a lot of conflicts, especially if you're having things coming in on semi-trucks. Something has to come in, something has to go out, and I think that you're kind of opening yourself up for some problems there if you don't have enough room for for trucks to circulate easily. So that would just be one thing. Hopefully you've thought of that. So getting back to the road now, it's just a road to nowhere, essentially.
Yes.
I noticed looking
It's
at
for property use only.
Okay. So I noticed looking at the aerials that it sort of dead ends into I think it looks like a gravel yard to the east there. Is that correct?
Correct.
So once the trucks come in, where do they turn around at?
We have to clear the area for that. That would be at the top of the hill and at the bottom of the hill.
Okay.
So they'd come in, they'd back in, and then they wouldn't turn around. They'd back in and then back and pull back out.
Okay, so they're reversing and then going out.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some more questions about the rail access. So on the site plan, it says that there's a proposed rail spur that we go in on the west side there, correct?
Correct.
And,
Yes.
yep. So right now, before that rail spur's constructed, you would be accessing the existing rail line on the north side. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes.
And you have easy way to access that existing rail line?
Oh, yes, yes, it's right on our property.
Okay. So with the proposed rail line, and notice that there's a storm line that runs parallel to it. Is that an easement that you'd be conflicting with? Do you know? Okay. Again, just something to be aware of, because depending upon how that, if it isn't an easement, how that's written, that may change, the layout of that rail line. And then, final question on the drive. So you're also proposing to have a truck scale. Is that going to be a portable truck scale? Is that permanent?
That's permanent.
How does that work?
That's permanent.
So when you do get to the point of having to install that pervious or impervious road there, is that just going to stay in place? How does that work?
Yeah, we would have the road there permanently. And we did go through all the process with the city when we actually put in the road and permits and everything.
But it would be there at the existing gravel road right now, correct?
Yes, yes,
And when the new road comes in, it just stays?
yeah, yeah. That the existing road has had many, many, many years of compaction, so it's ideal for us. Our trucks won't sink, there's no mud, it's had gravel put on it for years and years, so it's actually very easy to pave.
Okay. And then, final question, the trailer there next to the proposed parking lot, is that going to be a new trailer? Is it something existing? How's that going to
So we
play
have
out?
an existing trailer, yeah.
Okay, and this is going to stay?
It's going to stay until we actually build a building in the future.
Okay, and I guess that's kind of my point here. So you're going to look into put something permanent and an upgrade there, correct?
Correct, in the future. But right now, we have overburden, we have to take off and see where exactly we can put a structure.
Okay.
Before we can build it, or even put a plan together to build it.
Okay. Well, that answers my questions. Any other questions, Mr. Hicks?
Yeah, so my question is for my commission members. Is there any objection when we make the motion to add a condition to the surfacing and maintenance variance to have that expire September 30th of 2025? Any objection, or do you have any better date than that? That'd be approximately 1 year.
I guess I would ask Mr., do you think that you can meet that?
Oh, yes, very much so. Like I said, most of the road is already hardened and packed, so we're just moving over, 30 feet or 20 feet? The entrance? So, yeah.
Well, just to clarify, this will be to pave it.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
paving.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve design review DR-0013-2024?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve item DR-0013-2024.
We have a motion by Mr. Hicks. Do we have a second?
Second, Soriano.
Second by Mr. Soriano. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Hicks,
Yes.
Soriano,
Yes.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Pollyea,
Yes.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Mako.
Yes. Motion passes. Moving on to the final development plan. Do you have a motion to approve FDP-0008-2024?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve item FDP-0008-2024.
We have a motion by Mr. Hicks. Do we have a second?
Second, Soriano.
Second by Mrs. Soriano. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Hicks,
Yes.
Soriano,
Yes.
Pollyea,
Yes.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Mako,
Yes.
Tomarkin.
Yes.
Motion passes. And then finally, with the variance, do we have a motion to approve V-0023-2024 with the stipulation that the permanent road will be constructed by September 30th, 2025?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve item V-0023-2024 with the condition that the variance to section 1163.05A will expire September 30th of 2025.
I have a motion by Mr. Hicks. Do I have a second?
Second, Soriano.
Second by Mrs. Soriano. Any discussion?
I'm in favor of this variance, specifically on the lighting, given my earlier comments around security and site usage.
Any other comments? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Hicks,
Yes.
Soriano,
Yes.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Mako,
Yes.
Tomarkin,
Yes.
Pollyea.
Yes.
Motion passes. All right, that concludes our applications. Any unfinished business? Any new business? Official reports, Assistant City Attorney,
Nothing to report at this time.
Director of Planning.
Thank you all very much. The first item I'd like to bring to your attention is that we have a new member of the planning team. Mr. Frank Hall joined us about 2.5 weeks ago. He came to us via Florida, so 2 out of the 3 planners on staff have Florida roots and all that. So Gahanna must be doing something right. Get all these fine folks up here. So want to welcome Frank. He is taking the planning manager position, which was previously filled by Logan Stang. So you'll be seeing him here periodically. And we welcome aboard. We appreciate you, Frank. One other item I wanted to bring to your attention. So with the zoning code change that was implemented May 1st, there were 2 elements with the zoning code change that affect process and what planning commission's involvement in process, and that is we made a few items administrative through the variance process and through a minor development plan for some of those minor modifications that we see to site. So I thought I would just do a little bit of, give you guys an update if you're curious about what kind of applications and requests we're seeing with those, since you don't see them anymore. So far, there have not been any administrative variances approved or requested, so we haven't used that section of the code. But as far as development plans, there have been about 5 or 6 since May that have been approved administratively. Looking over those requests, a lot of them seem to be windows, doors, gazebo kind of changes. So exactly what I think we were anticipating to kind of weed out from Planning Commission. So again, I think there's been 5 applications so far, which honestly is a little bit more than was anticipating, but that's good to see that some of those code changes are being implemented and working so well. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll conclude director comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Council Liaison.
Council Liaison, Monday of this week, we discussed the plat at the Crescent at Central Park. Planning Commission just saw that 2 weeks ago. That went fairly well, and so I think that'll be voted on next week. That's the updates from council. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Madam Mayor?
The only comment I would add, actually, to Director Blackford would be the Orthopedic One project, which, as you know, is underway at Hamilton and Tech Center Drive. They are slated to move into that building in the first 2 weeks of October. So you might recall we had groundbreaking for that project in October of last year. So I very much commend all of our staff, not only our planning department, but our engineering department, Director Schultz, Public Service. There's been a lot of moving parts to that project to make sure that it stayed on time in order to being able to welcome this new employer to our city. So we'll look forward to some future opportunities to share around their grand opening celebration, but I do believe it's October 14th or the 21st when they're slated to be in there. So wonderful.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have no official report. Any correspondence and actions?
No, sir.
Okay, member comments. Ms. Pollyea.
I do not have any comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Polly. Mr. Hicks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome to Mr. Hall. Hope you're hope you're up for this. I would have thought we learned our lesson with hiring from Florida, but that's just me. I don't. So welcome aboard.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Mr. Greenberg?
No comments, thank you.
Mrs. Triano?
No comments, thank you.
Mr. Tamarkin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to congratulate the city for being ranked on Realtor.com, the #1 city in America to live in, which is why so many people moved from Florida to Gahanna, Ohio.
Welcome, Frank.
They read about it. Said, I got to go there. So congrats, well done. I think it's because of the planning commission, but.
No doubt.
Thank you, Mr. Tamarkin. The only comment I have is that I'm feeling much better than last time we met, so I got over my sniffles. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.